Alright, Gege, you've gone and made the strongest character in history. Now the real question is, how are we going to stop it? What's up, guys? Okkotsu here, and here we want to do a breakdown / discussion on how we're going to defeat Gojo. And by we, I mean Sukuna. Because I don't think anyone else is going to fight Gojo. Like, I'm not sure. Unless, like, the merger happens, I can't really conceive of someone else just randomly showing up out of nowhere to, like, box with Gojo. It's not like Kashima's gonna respawn after Sukuna's defeated. And so trying to mink with Gojo, which he would also very, very badly lose. But with that being the case, there are so many options that we need to discuss. And, like, I guess we kind of need to talk about the possibility. So let's not waste any more time and let's hop right into it. Ending me. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1, go. What's up, guys? That guy with a pencil here. Fun fact, I do happen to have it on me and keep it on me at all times. And another fun fact, Gojo. Neat. Real strong character. You know, it's the fusion of Satoru Gojo and Yuta Okkotsu. Very, very powerful. He's not going to beat Sukuna. He's not. Here's the thing. Let me lay this out clear for all the Gojo fans out there, all the Yujo fans out there, there are some fancy names y'all are cut up with, like Satokotsu or Okkotsu, like Okkotsu, like there are many different names for him. But Gojo, let me be real. If he wins, I ain't even gonna knock it fully. I'll be a bit disappointed because that'd be like two massive major antagonist dubs, if not the two main villain dubs of the series, given to Yuta. You know, the MC of the previous series, and not Yuji. So I feel a little iffy on it on that front. But, like, logistically, if Gojo just curb stomps Sukuna, I can't even be mad. Once again, it's the strongest character in existence. Of course, there's hot debate. It seems like he can just use Limitless. Maybe not even any fully manifested Rika. He may be fighting Sukuna alone. So, like, there's a whole bunch of factors that weakens him a lot from his hypothetical full potential. We'll cover the possible full potential of a Gojo in another video. But, let's be real. Level with me real quick. If you got faith in Gojo, raise your hand. Notice how you didn't raise your hand. Because no one ain't got no faith in Gojo. We think it's neat. We think it's cool. I think it's a cool plot twist. I think it beautifully wraps up Yuta Okkotsu's character. It plays well into all the discussions of him being a monster. It plays well into the idea of Satoru Gojo being Satoru Gojo as the strongest and not the strongest because he's Satoru Gojo, or vice versa. Yeah, literally vice versa, not that. The exact opposite of what I just said. But with that being the case, ultimately, I just don't really see how the character, narratively and character-wise, is meant to win this fight, and it feels satisfying. Because, like, in a roundabout way, if Yuta wins, it kind of justifies all the wrong ideas of Jujutsu Society. Like, yes, Gojo Satoru is just a weapon, and shall be exclusively used as a weapon. And Ryomen Sukuna was right. Just use the strongest against the strongest to defeat the strongest, and then the strongest wins. Yeah, beautiful, powerful. Sacrifice your morals, sacrifice your ideology. Dada-ding, bada-boom, you beat Sukuna. Like, it's there. It's there. You can definitely write a way around it to be like, oh no, this is technically still narratively satisfying. But, like, level with me. Gojo ain't winning. But the question is, if he ain't winning, how's he losing? Because right now, Gojo's set up really well. Like, super duper well. Like, this guy should be logistically, once again, unstoppable. Even with just the Limitless kit for 5 minutes with the 6 eyes. Like, come on now. He should be unstoppable, especially with how weak the Sukuna should be output-wise. Considering he's only at Yuta Okkotsu levels of cursed energy. Considering he's gone through everything. He's missing 2 arms, a heart, and his lower right eye. Like, this man should be light work. But let's just turn to a Sukuna stand for a minute. And I know some of y'all all are already Sukuna stands, so don't turn into nothing else. Y'all stay what y'all are. Let's talk about how Sukuna could win. Now, here's the thing. This chapter sets up the most boring way, in my opinion, that Sukuna could win. The idea that ultimately they kind of don't really know how this thing's gonna go. And we could go with the most boring, the most blasé, the most whatever explanation that Mei brings up. Here's my best guess. 1. If Kenjaku's curse technique functions constantly or at regular intervals, you'll be unable to sustain your body or soul and you'll die. That's the most easy way, right? Yuta's 5 minutes runs up and then he's done. He just plops over because Kenjaku's technique stopped working and he's just a brain in a body. And a brain that's not his brain. Well, no, it is his brain, but not his body. Like, straight up, that's just boom. He falls. That's it. Sukuna stalls for the 5 minutes. 5 minutes is up. Oh no! That's boring. I don't really want that. Let's be real. I mean, I can see it. It's definitely laid out as a possibility, but considering the unlikelihood of that, just based on how Kenjaku's been established, I think Gege would have to, like, really, like, once again, I try to go by the ideas of how much can Gege write around something, with it still not seeing fully I'm writing around something. It's something that a lot of authors will fall into, you'll notice, where, like, if they're going to do something, they'll justify it with something else. Gege does that commonly throughout the series, where something will be justified with something else eventually, or on the spot. But in this case, the amount of circle jerk of explaining that, oh no, Kenjaku's technique is constant activation, despite us seeing him in domain burnout, despite us seeing him with his brain cap spun off, despite us seeing him with the binding vow, consistently the stitches on his head at completely random time. Like, we've seen so much of Jaku that implies that his technique is more consistent than inconsistent, that, like, I don't think that's the best way to go out, though it is an established way. And Ryomen Sukuna has clearly, if he's shown one thing, it's that he's more than bulky enough. Like, really, really bulky. And bada bing, bada boom, he just survives for 5 minutes. Okay, fine, that's how Goto loses. Pretty boring. The next idea that comes to mind in how to beat Goto is a little iffy. It's a little iffy. A little bit devious. Yeah, y'all know what it is. It's that thick, that juicy, that hefty, scrumdiddlyumptious, delicious, top-of-the-line meal. Oh yeah. It's that World Slash. Now, here's the thing. We have very little confirmation for what Goto's abilities are. He kind of shows up, and then that's it. But presumably, if he has all of Gojo's abilities, he would likely have Auto Infinity. And if he has Auto Infinity, then unless Sukuna is using Domain Amplification inside Domain, he's not going to do anything to Goto. What is that? Goto. And on top of that, if he has Auto Infinity and he's forced to use Domain Amplification with only 2 arms, both on his right side, I just don't really see him winning that, unless we suddenly establish there was always a massive physicals gap between Yuta. Well, not Yuta, but Gojo and Sukuna, or True Form Sukuna really is just massively above Megano. We saw how their interactions went when it was hand-to-hand, Sukuna with both hands in Domain Amp, versus a Gojo with Infinity Active, plus blue and all that. So personally, I don't really think the little fashion Domain Amp Mink is going to work out too well, so World Slash is on the table. But here's the thing about World Slash, it's kind of been established to have specific conditions. Go back to chapter 255, and we have the narrator lay out something nice, juicy, direct, and clean for us. Dare I say, it's a teeny tiny bit scrumdiddlyumptious. This mantle is a slash that cuts the world and has a broadened curse technique target, so activating it requires the Enma palm sign, like when activating Malevolent Shrine. However, before transforming, when he had half his arms, Sukuna imposed a binding vow on the activation conditions, so he could cut Gojo. Now he must satisfy both the palm sign and curse chant conditions for the slash that cuts the world, and direct the curse technique with hand signs. In other translations, this is palm, hand signs, whatever. But essentially, World Slash is locked off right now. For all intents and purposes, as we see in 261, Sukuna, he hasn't really regenerated much of anything. Them arms are still gone. And maybe it'd be weird, though. Like, but he'd have 2 right hands. Can you do that? I'm not sure if you could make the Malevolent Shrine and my hand sign with 2 right arms. Like, I think it just wouldn't work, like, by a lot. Like, you would have to use, like, pinky and ring finger with 1 arm, but even then that just doesn't work. So realistically, for all intents and purposes, this man should not have access to World Slash. That should just be tech that's locked off, right? It should be, right? But remember, if there's one thing Sukuna's really good at, it's abusing the system. And let's be real. Let's be really real. Let's be really, really, really real. Does Sukuna, like, need too much to deal with the remainder of the cast? Like, it's clear, even after all that's happened, Sukuna physically is still definitely more than enough for the cast, I'd say, to a certain degree. Like, he's definitely up there in terms of physical still, in spite of all the damage Yuji has done to him soul-wise. So, like, I wouldn't say it's impossible that he could give something up for the sake of the same type of binding vow he used on Gojo. Simply sacrificing something else in order to do something else. But the question now would be, what does he sacrifice? Because before, he sacrificed World Slash's availability by locking it behind a whole bunch of stuff in order to even use it properly, in order to get it for free the first time. So now that he can't meet the conditions of the original binding vow he set up, and the fact that he can't break that binding vow in any way, shape, or form, because, like, one, sure, you can break binding vows with yourself and just lose the power, but then, A, he'd lose the power, meaning he probably couldn't do World Slash if he tried to break it, and B, he breaks that binding vow, how? Once again, he can't perform it. The conditions just can't be met right now. Whether it be because his tongue is still ripped out, or the fact that he literally cannot perform the Enma hand sign required because both of those arms are still missing. Of course, just like the lower left arm has started to regenerate to a certain degree, like, the other two, the hands ain't handsing right now. So I honestly don't see a World Slash how it originally needs to be formed in Goto's future. But the binding vow is there. But what does he sacrifice? At this point, with him being able to lock the binding vow to a point where the conditions of World Slash are super specific and cannot be met, I could see him sacrificing his curse technique. Like, something real big. Something real big in order to get access to World Slash without the conditions met. Because realistically, World Slash is just an extension of one's curse technique. That's what Chapter 255 explains. That's what Sukuna views it as. That's what the narrative itself views it as. But now, the real point of contention in question is, since it's just a curse technique extension, how big of a sacrifice would he have to make? Is a technique too much? Could he maybe just sacrifice a piece of the technique? Like, maybe in exchange for getting off this World Slash, he can never use Dismantle again. Like, or he can only use World Slash Dismantle from that point on, meaning his regular generic dismantles that he can do at any time can't happen. Or, vice versa, he sacrifices Cleave. In order for the ultimate ranged offense, he gets rid of any close range offense, and sacrifices Cleave completely in order to get the World Slash off, in spite of being unable to meet the conditions that were previously set by his original binding vow. I don't know. But, let me say, I think that's one of the most common options now. With Sukuna being put in a position where he is, where his arms simply are not allowing him to meet the conditions, and his RCT regeneration is messed up by Yuji Todori, I think ultimately that's the key. Binding vow into World Slash. But the question is, what does he sacrifice, and would Gege do that? I'd say so, because that's the cleanest way to get rid of Goto without it just being the time limit thing. Because like I said, I don't like the time limit idea. One, because like, I just think it's boring. And two, because it doesn't make sense with how the narrative, or at least Gege has set up Kenjaku's technique thus far. But with this, Sukuna still technically has a lot to give. Heck, he could sacrifice the merger, if he really felt like it. Once again, I'm still very iffy on the merger even happening at this point. So, with that being the case, I wouldn't be entirely too bamboozled if he sacrifices that, sacrifices Megumin, sacrifices something in order to get rid of Goto, considering Goto is now his biggest threat. As we've seen, don't get me wrong, Yuji's undeniably powerful and was definitely caught off guard at the start of the chapter when he thought he was about to get domain expansion into oblivion. Bro probably, if we're being completely real, that man likely had simple domain on the mind, being like, oh no, gotta pull that out. But he does get smacked away. Yuji ain't really all that. And if he just sacrifices a piece of his technique, whether it be the range or the close range, the technique that already is proven relatively ineffective on Yuji at this point, because of the output drop, I think it could be worth it. I think that'd be fair enough. And what it also does, in the long run, it sets up Yuji to come in later on. Don't get me wrong, Yuji's already proven that he can clutch up kind of mean, kind of clean. He can throw a little bit of hands here and there. He can get active when he really feel like it. He can move like that for real. But I think ultimately, Sukuna still does need a couple more nerfs. And just like Higuruba ended up taking away Kamutoke, something that Sukuna notes is ultimately very annoying, I think sacrificing all of his technique so we can properly get a 1v1 between Yuji and Sukuna, but with Yuji having a hefty advantage in his curse techniques and Sukuna losing them all, I think that's fair. I think it's a trade-off, and I think it's something valuable enough to sack Yuta. Because once again, we got to factor that in. When we're talking about defeating Goto, we aren't just talking about defeating a resurrected Satoru Gojo, or defeating Satoru Gojo again in general. No, we're talking about defeating Satoru Gojo and Yuta at the same time. Yuta, well, he ain't the most important character to the modern manga. He still is very important. He has a massive fan base, and he obviously is a very insanely important legacy character. So if we have Sukuna burn his entire curse technique on that in exchange for a binding vow, in order to do World Slash, in order to bisect Satoru Gojo resurrected through Yuta Okkotsu again, then I think that's a fair trade-off. What do y'all think? Do y'all think that's still not enough? Do you think he needs to give up more? And if you think that's the case, what else would you want him to give up? Because at this point, I'm kind of drawing blanks. I think binding vow is the most likely option, because I'm not exactly sure how he's supposed to beat Gojo. Unless we get into semantics and specifics, and really start to explore the question, is Satoru Gojo the strongest because he's Satoru Gojo? Or is... Wait, no, English. Is he the strongest because he's Satoru Gojo, or is he Satoru Gojo because he's the strongest? If we go with the latter interpretation, then Yujo should be perfectly equal to Gojo, right? Or at least mostly to the point where their domain should have equal refinement and everything like that. And bada bing, bada boom, we don't gotta worry about it. But, big butt edges, booty butt cheeks, at the same time, it could entirely be the case that Yuta freshly knew the body, the level of perception, and everything that's changed in a matter of seconds from his perspective, considering he had to immediately max out RCT to even fuse to the body properly, and then from that point on immediately teleport to the battlefield to fight and activate Unlimited Void using memories he just got access to. It may be entirely possible that bro's refinement just ain't there. And I know a lot of the Yuta fans are going to be like, Pencil Man, I know you did not just try and look at me in the face and say that Yuta Okkotsu's refinement ain't all that. And you're right, I was looking at the manga. I'm going to look you in the face and say maybe Yuta Okkotsu's refinement ain't all that in comparison to Satoru Gojo, just because of the level of fine detail. Notably, Yuta's still new to this. He's not true to it yet. And while, of course, the chapter end reveals that Yuta Okkotsu is going to use a very similar concept to Satoru Gojo and possibly shrink the barrier down in order to counter Malevolent Trine's effects, we know for a fact inside the domain, they only didn't have an interaction where Gojo was losing because they were perfectly even in terms of refinement. While Yuta's skill with domain is very, very impressive, to say he's on the same level of refinement as Satoru Gojo and Ryomen Sukuna would be kind of crazy. So I wouldn't be shocked if Gege leans into that angle. And thusly, Yuta isn't just getting pressed by Sukuna, missing 2 arms, a heart, and his lower right eye. He's also getting pressured by slashes that are breaking through due to his lack of refinement. And that allows Sukuna to win eventually because Gota would take enough damage, slowly but surely, on top of the damage that Sukuna was dealing to him, on top of the fact that his domain would be shattering from the outside, in spite of him taking the small ball idea and using the experience that Gojo has in order to replicate that. That, I think, could work. It, once again, would do twofold. It would set up the fact that Satoru Gojo was the strongest because he was Satoru Gojo, not vice versa, because he would have the refinement exclusively. He would have the control and practice and memorization with his body to where he could pull off that massive high-level refined domain expansion with all the information, everything needed for it, while Yuta can't. And also, once again, plays into what I think is super duper important in this fight, the idea that Ryomen Sukuna is simply the strongest sorcerer. Even when reduced down to nothing, his understanding of the system is that much better than most people that a copycat using the body of someone who is very, very strong and nearly as skilled as Sukuna just can't cut it. It's a twofold thing, and would allow you to go out in still a very epic fashion as he gets sliced to ribbons by the domain expansion. There is that on the table. And also, we kind of just don't know fully how Sukuna would really deal with a proper domain clash like this. This is 228, and this is actually quite a calm little bit after they started doing the small ball idea. But Gojo himself even admits, Sukuna's fighting kind of weird. Why? Sukuna's only activating his techniques granted by the domain. And when the domain's internal and external conditions are reversed, thereby decreasing the resistance to pressure from the inside, he took a risky move rather than trying to break the barrier from the inside. While our can't-miss attacks offset each other inside the domain, Sukuna has no means of attack other than amplification for defeating my limitless curse technique. That's what gives me a big advantage. Inside the domain, he also can't use architectural structure to attack like before. I proceeded as if I had the advantage during the 3 minutes until the domain got destroyed on the outside. So why isn't Sukuna trying to use the 10 channels technique, specifically Mahoraga, inside the domain? Could it be that Sukuna remembers my conversation with Megami and knows about that I know about Mahoraga? Is he afraid it'll waste it in a single move? What's going on? So, there are unknown factors how Sukuna could respond to the domain. Once again, while the shrinking of the domain is a very impressive feat and also does solve the internal and external durability issue by adding that 3-minute timer before Malevolent Trine can break through, how strong is it on the inside? We don't actually know. Sukuna could just fully attack that. Once again, it's hard to perceive the edges of domains, like especially the way that Gege draws their domain clashes in particular, because they have the whole space background fused with the skull and bones background. So we can't really see the barrier, but Sukuna likely can. And as long as he concentrates enough, say he's in contact with Yuta Okkotsu, and Yuta and him are clashing, and then Sukuna turns off his sure hit, just like Sukuna did in the fight with Gojo, but now, while the barrier is small balling, he's attacking from the outside with high frequency and the inside with high frequency, focusing everything there, and then challenges the domain even faster. And then Yuta's without a curse technique. And then the fire. No, maybe with the fire arrow, because once again, it's a question of whether or not Sukuna could prepare that against Gojo. But technically, he'd be able to hit Gojo with Cleave and Dismantle at the same time, and then Flame Arrow. And that could also take out Gojo. Considering, once again, just the lack of ability and hypothetical lack of refinement and understanding and access to Gojo's full capabilities just because of how fresh the body is. And that's the big thing. And also, once again, going in the order of least likely, I still think the most likely thing is Binding Vow. I'll be completely honest with you. I think Binding Vow is the top thing. And then I'd put the difference in refinement. Then I'd put Sukuna attacking the barrier in a different way to make sure that the timer goes quicker so he doesn't have to deal with Gojo as long. And then I'd put the time limit thing. But at the bottom of likelihood, I do want to throw one more hypothetical. One more option. One more bit of depth to hypothetically understand. Megumi's still in there. To some degree, Megumi's still in there. We know Yuji's able to reach him and interact with him. He's still in there. And of course, Sukuna's fully incarnated. Naturally, the brain and the body have to be linked in the technique of the brain and the body. They have to be fundamentally linked, right? There's absolutely no way that one could use a curse technique of another body or another brain if they've incarnated fully, or vice versa, unless Sukuna still has access to the 10 Shadows. Now, of course, this is the least likely. I do think I kind of, just because he hasn't used it in a while, I kind of agree with the common community consensus that that man has lost 10 Shadows fully, especially considering what? Big Raga's already been vaporized. What's the point of the 10 Shadows? Totalities. Don't forget about the Raga totalities. And also, the idea of Yorozu. If you'll remember, Yorozu did not fully incarnate. We don't even know if Ryu did, because Ryu did not have hair. He did not have the canon hair. But with that being the case, we don't know if they fully incarnated either, but at least with Yorozu, she was still in Samugi's body. That's actually a major plot point in the fight. She brings it up right at the start, and even Sukuna acknowledges that he stayed the same way. But Sukuna was able to use Cleave and Dismantle, and obviously Malevolent Shrine, while still being Megana. But his brain should still be Megumi's brain, right? So why does he have access to his curse technique? Well, I think the curse technique is still tied to the soul. And since we know Megumi's soul is still in there, that bad boy still exists inside Sukuna, I actually wouldn't find it too bamboozling, too crazy, too buku bonkers, if Sukuna all this time still had access to the 10 Shadows. He just didn't use it because he didn't feel like it. But now, that he's presented with an opportunity, why not? It's there again. Or it may have never left in the first place. That's the thing. We know the body and the brain do not have to sync up perfectly in order to use a curse technique. The soul can kind of just be there. And the soul can have and carry the data to allow curse technique usage in a different body. We see this with Meguna, we see this with Yorozu, and we may even see it with other incarnated sorcerers. Gege sort of laid that card under there. So if a hypothetical totality would be brought about, not just of Ahito, but Ahito, Maharaga, all the different destroyed Shikigami, and the remains of the Divine Dog, or the Rapid Escape, or anything like that, I could see Gota simply being overwhelmed by endless creatures that could adapt to all of his abilities, slowly but surely wearing him down. Now, of course, like I said, that's the least likely. I don't fully believe in that, but I just really want more 10 Shadows totalities, because Sukuna's the best 10 Shadows user, despite not actually being a canon 10 Shadows user. Or at least not one board with it. So I kind of just want more 10 Shadows. That's my last bit of copium for how Sukuna could hypothetically defeat this Gota Okkotsu. But let's just review. In order of likelihood. Least likely is 10 Shadows. Once again, it just hasn't appeared in a long time. I would not be shocked if Gege just didn't care about it. And Sukuna didn't care about it. And thusly, they don't think it's going to be effective against the Limitless and don't pull it out. Number 2. the idea that Okkotsu may just have a refinement issue. He may just not be Satoru Gojo, because Satoru Gojo is the strongest, because he is Satoru Gojo. Thusly, despite Gojo possessing his body and his ability and his 6 eyes, due to the lack of information, a lack of time to prep, and a lack of time to prepare for the new level, and maybe that hinted at sloppy cursed energy control that Gojo mentioned before, even with the 6 eyes, Gojo just falls short in refinement, and thusly his domain isn't strong enough to resist Sukuna's. 3, the idea that Sukuna could just be playing Gojo, or have played Gojo, and ultimately he had numerous different ways to respond that we just didn't know about, based on the fact that he attacks in different ways and was searching for something specific when fighting Gojo initially, fighting Gojo initially using the 10 Shadows technique. There's that. And then of course, I hate that this is one of the more likely ones, but there is just the timer. I don't like the timer. I really don't like the timer. Can y'all tell I don't like the timer? I really don't like the timer idea. But the timer idea is laid out there. It is entirely possible. Bro may only have 5 minutes. It's entirely likely. I can see Gege do it if they really want to get Gojo up out of there. But the 5-minute thing, it's set up. It's mentioned by Mei. It's entirely possible. I don't like it. I feel like it'd contradict a lot. But once again, I can see Gege taking ankles. But finally, the most likely one, the main one, the one I could see happening above all else, is the idea of a binding vow on top of a binding vow. All Sukuna needs is one. He just needs one thing in order to get rid of Gojo, and that's that world slash. Sure, Yuta could survive getting bisected once, but what about twice? Gojo couldn't. I highly doubt Yuta could. So if he can just get that one world slash off, then the strongest fusion in history would fall, just like his previous incarnation did. However, that's what I think. Please, what you guys think in the comment section down below. How do you think Sukuna is going to overcome Gojo? If you think he's going to overcome at all, do you have absolute faith in Gojo? Do you think he's absolutely going to rip out his meat and just smack it on Sukuna's forehead, and then he's going to give Sukuna a concussion, and then bada bing, bada boom, the story's saved? Please let me know all that and more in the comment section down below. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, please leave half off. Yeah, I said it. Half off. Just like Gojo's body was half off for you to take over. Leave half off in the comment section down below. I'd like to thank you so much for watching. Please remember to leave a like, share, comment, and subscribe. And make sure you hit that little notification bell so you do not miss out on any videos that come to the channel. Also, I do happen to have a Patreon down below where you can support me for as low as $1 things like exclusive videos, early content, and more. You can also now become a member to the channel for as low as $3 a month to get the same perks and more. Some of those perks include the live reaction to the very next chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, ad-free variation of all my videos, and if you become a $25 patron or a $25 member, you can order whatever video you want. Also, I do have a link to my Ko-Fi in the description down below where you can drop 5 beats for a short video, 25 beats for a long video, or any support at all is always greatly appreciated. Now, I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching once again, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. This is that guy with the pencil, writing off. I'd like to give a thank you to our $3 members: Recliner Plays, Greyhound, Kids Void, Astro, Eternal Flame, King Sukuna, NMA, Real Rare, Paris Arnold, G Prosper, and Red Wolf 4765. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $5 patrons: Steron, Sean, Sammy, Midnight Lord 21, Kevin Encarnacion, Josh Brown, and A+A. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $7 patrons: Autumn Mornings Lazo and Fine. And I'd like to give a thank you to our $10 members: Robbie Uchiha and Jay Warrior. And I'd like to give another thank you to our $10 patrons: Panda Goat, Metal Solid Crisis, Joaquin Munoz, and Joaquin Munoz, along with Idemokami. And I'd like to give a final gargantuan thank you to our $25 patron, Calvin Elder.